Day after day, in the temple courts and from house to house, they never stopped teaching and proclaiming the good news that Jesus is the Messiah.
These were words written about the earliest Christian community, based in Jerusalem and written about in Acts of the Apostles, chapter 5 and verse 42. Today, Christians all around the world still live as part of communities. They practice their faith together, they support one another, and try to live lives like Jesus of Nazareth.
Welcome to the Bible Feed podcast, a place for conversations about the Bible and faith in the modern world. Our last few episodes have been more focused on biblical content. We've been discovering Jesus in Matthew's Gospel. We've looked at a prophecy about Tyre and explored the biblical meaning of the word soul. But for this episode, we'd like to switch to an aspect of faith in the modern world. Faith in real-life situations in the here and now. In this episode, Josh Dean and Kat Hayes discuss what it means to be a believer as part of a community. And in particular, they reflect on how members of Christian communities responded to the pandemic and what can be learned from that as things return slowly to some kind of normality. So, let's get started.
Welcome everyone. Today we're thinking about the believer and community. My name's Josh and I've got Kat with me here. Hi Kat.
Hi Josh, how are you?
I'm very well. How are things with you?
Not too bad, thank you, not too bad.
Wonderful. So the subject today is the believer and the community. And we're thinking about obviously the changes that have happened since lockdown, because what it looks like to be a believer probably looks a bit different, because lots of people might be familiar with church going, maybe on a Sunday morning, something like that. Going to a building, spending some time with other people who believe similar things to you. All sorts of different activities might come to mind, but things have been a bit different. But cast your mind back to before the pandemic, before the lockdown. What kind of stuff did you do on a week-to-week basis with other people who believe similar things to you?
So I moved to Watford about 6 years ago. I'd lived in Cardiff for maybe 15 years. Mm-hmm. And actually what I'd say was really nice straight up was being part of the Christadelphian community. A few people that I'd grown up with a long, long time before got in touch with me, and just having that nice connection to people in Watford to be able to turn up, friendly faces and get involved. Informal sort of events that we get involved in. So at Watford we have weekends away, so we all get to go and spend a weekend together in a, let's call it basic accommodation, sure. Josh, for the purposes of this.
Spartan.
But again, it's just a lovely time sort of away together, just some Bible studies, some walks, some craft activities. And I think what's really nice about that is the family feel. So, it's everybody from the elderly members right through to people with young children, babies, and there's just something for everything. And it's just nice to spend that time together as a family. I guess I also found people then that I connected with maybe closer as friends. So I have a Thursday night club with actually Josh's wife, Becky, and another lady. And I'd say the three of us in any other circumstance probably wouldn't have met. Mm-hmm. We're from very different walks of life. But actually for us, it's a really important monthly meet up that we get to spend time. We have food and we just kind of chat about anything that maybe we don't want to talk about with, in a wider kind of discussion.
Right. And
I think we've all found that really, really valuable. One of the things I'd say about the Christadelphian community is we love food. So often food-related events, it might be lunch after a service. Yeah. It might be, I think it's probably the week just before lockdown, the first lockdown, we had everybody or whoever wanted to come over to our house, and we just put on some food, did a reading, some people went for a walk, and it's just opening up your house for people. Yeah. Just, I guess, having that sort of time together that's not in, like, say, a formal meeting room, but just a chance just to spend time together.
Right, okay. So there's different scales that you sort of talked about it. There's the kind of the network, between locations. You move from one place to another, but there was a connection that someone else might have had, the sort of the friend of a friend idea. And then when you're in a physical location, we're both living in Watford, you meet people who may be very different to you, but physically there's some sort of proximity in terms of geographically where you live. But then how have things changed then possibly with the pandemic? Obviously you could travel and you could visit friends and family before, you could go further afield in that sense. But what kind of things have stopped happening, big scale or small scale, because of the lockdown? And has there anything that sort of started? Is there anything new that's come along to replace any of those things?
So I guess our disclaimer here is Josh and I actually live in a commune together. So there's, 5 of us, but 4 have stayed together for the since March last year, March 2020.
Commune is a grand word. It's just it's a house with
a community. We all just live together.
Yes,
we want it to sound fancy. So I think for us, as a group of 4, it was quite an interesting experience. So we kind of just did it for various reasons and then went into lockdown about 2 weeks having moved in together.
Yeah.
But actually for us, I think that gave us a sense of community in the house together. You know, a lot of people I know have been on their own and have really struggled, but I think for us it gave us a nice basis of just having company for, I guess, a year and a half now of essentially a lockdown. Yeah. And I think we could never have planned it, but by circumstance that happened, and I think it's probably worked out well for us. Just, I was living on my own before we moved in, so we'd never have known this was coming, but to have people around during that time, I think has been quite important for us. And I guess, and I've got a lot of friends who maybe are on their own or in different circumstances. So I think in terms of changes, it made you probably more aware of where you maybe needed to help people. So one of my friends and I, she lives in Birmingham, but we would walk together, so virtually. So we'd phone each other on a Saturday morning for 9 o'clock and just sort of, we'd walk our own kind of routes, but just being really mindful then that she was on her own and just giving her someone to sort of chat to, having, spent, and she was not working for some of it, so just giving her that time and somebody to sort of chat to. I guess, I know for us in Watford, there's been quizzes and things like that people can join. But yeah, I suppose a lot of that community feel did sort of feel it has sort of paused. It's very, very different. But there's still some real positives in it, in the way people have looked after each other. So, people around Watford have kind of messaged each other, have made sure people are okay. Hopefully Josh won't mind me saying he actually had COVID in January, and the amount of people that were messaging us and were saying, do you need anything? With people dropping around carrots and milk and all the essentials.
The basics.
But and suddenly just like that overnight, we can't leave the house. Again, it's that community sense of how can we help? How can we get stuck in? I think as a house, we did that for others as well. Just being mindful, people that maybe were more vulnerable, older, couldn't leave their houses when we live near enough to shops to be able to pick up, emergency things for people. I think that's when you see it's a different community. It's not all being able to be together, but there's actually a really nice caring aspect that people showed to all of us. I think we showed it to others, and I think we certainly felt it here. Yeah,
it's interesting, I think, to think about the examples of the stuff you talked about. So buying food and taking it to others and looking out for people who have a variety of different needs, and because of the situation that people found themselves in, that's what being part of a religious community looked like. Instead of we all dress a certain way and we all go to a certain building on a Sunday morning at a certain time and do certain things. Instead, because of what has happened, things change and people change, but the links and the community still stays the same, even if the activities and what they're focused on doing and how they interact, in this case due to the pandemic, is forced to change. I know you've travelled around when travelling was
back in the day.
Back in the day, those it seems like so long ago. But I know you visited other Christadelphian ecclesias, communities, groups of believers, up and down this country and in other countries as well. Are there any things that sort of stay the same no matter where you go, or are things sort of based on the location that they're in and things like that? And so, almost everything is different when you arrive somewhere new.
I think if I just talk for the UK, I think there's so many similarities. Generally, everyone's very friendly, people are very welcoming. Like I said, as a community, very hospitable. People will always open up their homes to people. So I think that I've always found. I think with everything, Josh, it's what you put into it. You can turn up and sit silently in the corner, or you can engage and chat to people. And obviously then, you do get more out of it. And it does take time to get to know people on different levels. But yeah, for sure, everywhere I've been, very similar. The formal services, there's always probably something in the week. There's often, I'm not a sports person, as you well know, but there's often football teams, there's sports teams, whatever in that area people like as a sport. But actually, you've reminded me, when I was 18, my friend and I flew to America, and actually we'd never been. We landed in Los Angeles, and a family just came to meet us, and we just stayed with them for 3 weeks in America. And to try and explain that to your friends at school at 18, that I'm just going to go and meet strangers, but actually for us, there's a real sense of safety, and it's quite interesting. That's quite normal for us. We'd often go away at kind of to youth weekends at sort of 16, wouldn't even give it a second thought. And it's only when you're trying to explain it to a friend at school, they're like, but you don't know these people, you don't even know what they look like. And this was, bear in mind my age, before the days of Facebook, and you wouldn't even have physically seen that person. They're there with a banner at the airport saying welcome. Felt completely safe, completely not, like I said, the just people opening up their homes is such a big thing, I think, of the community. Yeah,
no, that reminds me of almost the exact same thing, but just a different place. I had a year out studying in Argentina, and so that's a 15-hour flight. There are a few other people from my university who also were studying there, and then the first weekend after we all landed, we all thought, well, they all thought that we were the only people that knew each other from our group, and I said, actually, I'm actually going to meet someone. I'm going to go get on a bus for 8 hours and go meet up with someone in a place called Cordoba. And they were like, well, how do you know anyone here? And I said, well, I haven't actually met them before, and I only know someone who knows them. But yes, you're right. There was no, I don't know, there was no fear or trepidation in my mind. I was thinking before this, one of the reasons I think possibly that is a quality that you find everywhere is because of the example of Jesus, who welcomed people, who went out of his way to interact with people, and who may well not have been, first on many people's invite lists. And so I'm thinking of a specific verse in Romans chapter 15, verse 7 says, therefore welcome one another, just as Christ also welcomed you to the glory of God. Because we are part of this believing community, because we have faith in Jesus of Nazareth, we try to emulate his actions, in some ways, and because we were welcomed and forgiven and introduced to God's plan of salvation, we should similarly sort of pay that on and put that into practice in how we organise things or how we think about other people. But I mean, I'm interested in something you said earlier, where you talked about the group that you meet up with on a Thursday, and you said that you're from different walks of life. You're
very different ages,
different backgrounds in some sort of sense. But there's at least one thing in common that you have, and I mean, I'm interested in that sort of idea that through being part of a believing community, you interact with people who otherwise you wouldn't have come into contact with. Now that's true of, you go to work and you meet with people you otherwise probably wouldn't have met up with, or you join a club because you love playing chess so much or something like that, and you meet other chess aficionados. But do you think the church is different in some sort of way, that the net is slightly wider cast in some sense, that you're meeting people who are possibly more varied in backgrounds?
Definitely. So I think, I've worked in, I've recently moved roles, but before that I was 10 years in my previous role or company. And I think, you get to know people, but certainly in the role I do, when you're going through difficult restructures or kind of conversations with people, you tend to work quite closely with maybe a manager, and you build quite a strong relationship from that. Yeah. And I think with the Christadelphian community, like you say, is that having the same beliefs and almost values. And I think it's hard to say in the sense, obviously there's people you're always going to get on better with than others.
Sure, yeah.
So I think there's, that's something you always have to accept. And actually when you were talking, it reminded me of someone I heard speak years ago, and she always said, you're going to have your close friends, and that's great. But when you're at a big event, make sure that you speak to the other people. You can always catch up with your friends at any time. Mm-hmm. So a bit like this Thursday group, we connect kind of out of the formal meeting, so that it's, people don't feel left out of that.
Right.
But I think particularly that the three of us, it's hard to put your finger on, but it's something about just being able to be quite, not open, but just vulnerable maybe. So things and conversations that you maybe wouldn't feel comfortable with a bigger group or with certain people, we've just been able to open. And I think once you start that, it builds and grows. Yeah. So yes, we will have a meal together, but also it is that conversation, and it really is. It's just things that maybe we've been thinking about for a while, or it's quite intense in that respect. It might be like, how was your day? But actually we get very quickly into, I've been thinking about this, or I've heard about this, and I just really want to kind of bounce ideas around and get views from two completely different people to each other and to me.
Part of that, I think, maybe two things are. One, we don't have, well, in our community, we often talk about, quite big, heavy topics. So we talk about forgiveness, we talk about faithfulness, we talk about, justice and mercy, and how you balance the two, and what examples do we see in the biblical record about that can help us inform the decisions we make in our lives. So oftentimes we're dealing with pretty heavy stuff on a regular basis with people alongside us, and then that alongside us bit is our second point, that there's an equality amongst the members in terms of how easy it is to join, for want of a better word, in that no one is part of our community because of how much money they make, or because of how strong their CV is, or something along those lines. It's their faith, it's their interest, and their fidelity to the example of Jesus, and wanting to spend time with others who are also trying to learn and to live faithful lives, lives of service, whatever it might be. But there's no hierarchy, I suppose.
That's why when you were saying that, that's what came to me. I think with work, no matter how people try not to, it just is. And I think, if we think about our group of friends, none of us sit really talking about what we do for a living. We're not. It's the conversation is just much more personal about you as an individual. Yeah. And for me, that's quite important, because I don't think that doesn't form who we are as a person. Whereas sometimes at work, it's always there. It's always a bit underlying. Yeah,
even if it's unsaid.
Yeah, but I think in sort of the kind of Christadelphian community, it's removed quite significantly. The people I've found.
I suppose your mileage may vary in different places, but alongside that, the hierarchy thing. Similarly, the money aspect, I think, separates it from other sorts of activities that that people might do, or that I might do, that there's no payment to get in, there's no price for admission, and nor is anyone else gaining or benefiting in a monetary sense from me being there. My personal data isn't being sold for advertising or whatever it might be.
It's true. There's no qualifications. There's no particular background. You can just turn up.
Yes, you don't have to come supplied with specific references or
CV.
anything like that. Yes, here's my cover letter. I'd like to share in a meal. Which and again, we could look for parallels. Jesus again and again in the Gospels is either being invited to meals or sharing meals or asking to participate in meals. I'm thinking of Zacchaeus, someone who's a tax collector who, although he does have a position of authority, it's a sort of a resented position of authority for a lot of people. Jesus willingly wants to go and spend time with him and the people of his household, and other people are sort of shocked and taken aback by this. But again and again, you see examples where the idea of lots of different people coming around to get closer to Jesus in some sort of sense, who come from very, very different backgrounds and from very different strata in society. That was a bit more clear then than it is now. But yes, the types of practices, the activities, those sorts of things that you've talked about don't have a gatekeeper sort of standing in there checking people as they're coming in and coming out, I suppose. Coming back to the pandemic and the changes, you've talked about some of those as you sort of look forwards, as we're coming out of the lockdown. It always yes, we shall see whether things change once again. But let's say we are. Are there any things that you think will change, or anything that you think actually it'd be really good to get that back up and going? Some things might stay the same, some things might change, or do you think it'll just sort of be we'll go back to the way things were done before? Or have we learned any lessons, I guess, from this sort of time broadly?
Hopefully. I think one thing that came to mind actually was over the last maybe 3 months. So a couple of my friends and I, we do a class together once a week. Mm-hmm. So we're all so you've got myself in Watford, someone in Birmingham, and then a couple over in Norfolk in Kings Lynn. And again, a very mix of ages. And we started doing this weekly class. And again, really open. We can talk about anything, all online. Yeah. And that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if we hadn't been in lockdown, and that we were all sort of looking for something else from a Bible study perspective. But I would like to think that could continue. I think what it has done in lockdown is opened up opportunities to meet with people from sort of slightly further afield. Mm-hmm. And there's obviously positives and negatives to that. You don't, on a Sunday service, you could join somewhere else because you're dialing in, joining on Zoom, you're not physically going to a location. And I think that's got some benefits. You get to experience meet different people. I think, looking forward to getting back and actually meeting people face to face. I think, even from a work context, we've moved to virtual meetings, video calls, but you can't really get the same benefit as meeting people face to face. Just everything from seeing the emotion, the kind of reactions and that sort of side of things. I think you get better relationships from face to face. So I am looking forward to being able to sort of physically join back together and meet people. It'll be an interesting one to see, I think. Like I said, I'd hope there's some of the things we've started doing online, like I said, with maybe more distance that we can continue to do. But I think what is also important is your local community and getting that group and sort of focusing on that immediate group rather than rushing off and trying to visit every friend around the country again. I think that was one of my big realisations of lockdown, is how fortunate we are in Watford to have a group of people that really looked after each other. And you have to obviously give back to that as well. And I think sometimes you can drift in and out a little bit, and because we have all sort of got friends and family all over the place. And I think that would be quite important to make sure that people do feel they want to and are able to come back and be together.
That is a great vision and a great challenge also to those of us who are looking ahead to the lifting of lockdown and what we can do to support those near to us, those in our community, and those we might come across. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you very much for talking to us about the community, and we'd love to hear from people what changes you have experienced as a result of the pandemic in your faith community. Are there any things that you've learnt where you'll be making changes when lockdown lifts? We'd love to hear from you, so contact us via the biblefeed.org website. Stay safe, stay well, and we will see you in the next episode.
You've been listening to the Bible Feed podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. We're actually coming up to our first birthday. A couple more episodes and we'll reach that milestone. So we just wanted to say we've really enjoyed putting these episodes together. But we've also received some great feedback from you on the topics we've covered. All the episodes we've done, and looking back, we've covered all sorts of subjects. They're all on our webpage at biblefeed.org, or you can subscribe through Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Amazon, etc. If you've enjoyed them, please continue to give us your feedback on the website or on our Facebook page. Like and follow or subscribe. It helps other people to find us and share this journey of discovery of the Bible and faith together. We've got some great episodes planned for the next few months as well. Dan will be finishing off his exploring of Matthew's Gospel, and we'll soon be starting a series on the Book of Revelation. Not an easy part of the Bible to think about, but absolutely fascinating. So we hope you'll enjoy those. So thanks again for joining us, and we hope you'll stay with us on the journey.